Hey, I decided to review the movie Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which came out in 1986, but it was not officially released in the US until 1990. It was having a hard time to finding distributors, I'm guessing because of the content of the movie, but the movie was not officially released in the US until 1990. Uh, but it came out in '86. The movie is directed by John McNaughton, and it stars Michael Rooker, who is kind of like a B-list actor now. A lot of people will know him as Merle from The Walking Dead, or if you're a fan of comic book movies, he plays Yondu in both of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's been in a lot of other things. Uh, but those are the two main ones I know him from. Oh, besides this, this is actually the first movie I saw him in. But the other actor is Tom Towles, or Towers. He plays, uh, Michael Rooker plays Henry Lee Lucas, and Tom Towers plays Otis Toole. And Tom Towles has a lot of small roles in a bunch of horror movies. He's been in a lot of Rob Zombie movies, like the Firefly family movies, like The Devil's Rejects, and I don't know if he was in House of a Thousand Corpses or not. He was in the Halloween remake. He had a bunch of small cameos in a lot of Rob Zombie movies. Uh, and the other big the other actress is Tracy Arnold, which I didn't look up her filmography. I'm not really familiar with her, but the two main guys I'm more familiar with. But anyways, I got the idea to review this movie because Netflix actually dropped a documentary uh a few weeks ago called The Confession Killer, which is about Henry Lee Lucas. I thought I had to rewatch it again because I tried doing this review before watching the movie, and I could not remember a lot of the information about Henry Lee Lucas because I haven't read or watched a documentary about him in a long time. And I do remember some things, but the documentary really didn't cover him. It was more about how the Texas Rangers and the Texas Police Department basically let him confess to all these killings that he didn't do, and now they're basically backtracking to find out who the real killers are in the present day now. It's a good documentary. It really doesn't cover Lucas that much like I thought it would, but or even Toole, who was his accomplice. But now, watching that documentary and watching this movie is it's loosely based on Lucas. It's not like an actual depiction. But just watching that documentary, it makes you think, like, wow, like, this movie is really inaccurate. But this movie came out in '86, not that long after Lucas was captured. Because Lucas was captured in 1983. So, they still believe that he did commit some of these killings, or he committed all of these killings. Now, I thought for a while, because I've read books on him and seen some documentaries, I knew that he did lie about most of the killings, but I think some of them he did commit, but most of these weren't solved until DNA came into play, and that wasn't until, like, the 2010s. So I really didn't keep up with Lucas by that point. So I believe that he probably didn't commit any of those murders he claimed, besides three, which was uh this woman named Kathy, an elderly lady in her 80s, his mother, and Becky Powell, who was his girlfriend. at the time, which, just to let you know, Becky was 15 and Henry was in his late 40s. So yeah, he was a pedophile too, just to let you know. Alright, so, I know I went on a little spiel about this, but I'm trying to give you some of the history about him. Now, I actually heard about Henry Lee Lucas way before I saw this movie, because I live in Florida, and we learned about the Adam Walsh incident, which, if most people don't know, they're not into true crime, but John Walsh, the creator of the show America's Most Wanted, his son was kidnapped way back in like 80 or 81 from a Sears store in Florida. It was like now down south, near South Florida, I think Hollywood, Florida. His son Adam was kidnapped from a store, and he was later found dead. And a lot of people think that Otis Toole, who was Henry Lee Lucas's accomplice in the killing or in his murder spree, was the one that killed Adam Walsh. And that's where we get the code, like in stores, when you go into stores, there's a thing called Code Adam. That's when a child goes missing. And that's where it came from, was from the Adam Walsh incident, the Adam Walsh murder. I forgot how old Adam Walsh was, but I believe he was like under 10 years old, but I don't know the specific age. I forgot to look it up. But, yeah, that's how I knew about Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, because they're known to be nomadic killers, and they travel from state to state, and one of the states they supposedly went to was Florida. And Henry Lee Lucas, for a while, actually lived in Jacksonville, Florida. He actually had a job and lived in Jacksonville. So that's how I knew about them. And then I saw this movie. That's how I found out about this movie. Now, let me get into the plot of the movie. So, the movie is about, uh, I haven't seen this movie in a while. I haven't seen it in years, and then when I rewatched it, I forgot how slow burn it was. But basically, the movie follows Henry Lee Lucas. He's played by Michael Rooker. Basically, his day in life, like how he functions, how he can hold a job in real life, and at night I guess at night he he's a serial killer, and it basically shows the day in the life of a serial killer, kind of like the movies August Underground or Man Bites Dog, which I need to review. Man Bites Dog, that's a really good movie. And then it shows him developing a friendship with Otis Toole and his Otis Toole's sister Becky in the movie. But Becky in real life was Otis Toole's niece, not his sister. And Becky in the movie, she is older in this one, probably in her 20s or 30s, and she has a kid in the movie, and she's on the run from her ex-husband or boyfriend, and she moves to Chicago where Henry and Otis live. And Otis has a job, is I think just fresh out of prison, and he's working at a job at a gas station. He pumps gas and, checks people's tires and stuff like that. But there's also a subplot where he is dealing drugs to this teenage boy, and it kind of shows like the real life Otis, his sexual perversions and stuff. His Otis Toole, I don't think he could hold a job down in real life, and I think it was the same way with Henry Lee Lucas. Like, they could not hold down a job in real life. But yeah, that's basically the movie. It just shows these two people going around killing people. Well, Otis later, because I guess later on Henry like influences him to help him kill. But I think in real life Otis O'Toole was just like a brutal man, and he didn't care. He was like he would kill people, do all that. Now I don't know if Otis Toole if he killed if how many people he killed if that's been proven or not, but I'm just gonna go I'm just gonna go by what his personality was, that he was a brutal person in real life, so I'm guessing he probably did kill some people. But anyways. But yeah, this movie is really disturbing even for nowadays. I mean, this movie came out in '86, but to see it nowadays is still pretty fucking brutal. Especially the part that stands out to me is when is this videotape where Henry and Otis break into a house. Well, I'll prefix this with the death where they get the camcorder. Now, let me go back to that death. Okay, so Otis during the movie, he gets mad and he kicks the TV in and he breaks it. So Henry and Otis go find a new TV and they go to like the shabby, like a black market kind of it's like this dude sells TVs out of this garage or like a storage shelter, and so they only have $50 on them, and they're like, well, what can we get for $50? And the guy said, you can get this set over there for $50, and they said, well, it's a black and white TV, and he said, well, what do you expect to get for $50? So they start haggling with him, and they want to get a color TV for $50. And then he was telling them, like, I can sell you this set and also this camcorder. And they're like, well, what does the camcorder do? And they said, oh, you make your own movies on it, that kind of thing. And then, well, they're trying to figure out, and then Henry's like, well, can we get that set for $50? And the guy said, no. He said, because it's a color TV. And he said, well, Henry's like, well, I want a color TV. He said, are you guys stupid? You know, I told you can only get the black and white TV for $50. Like, the guy was being rude to him, but but Henry and Otis were kind of like not using their brains at the moment. And, well, they get pissed off and they end up killing him, the TV salesman. And that scene's kind of comedic now because it's so over the top. Like, Henry stabs him in the hand and then starts stabbing him in the chest and all that with like a screwdriver. And then they bash the TV over his head and then turn it on and electrocute him. Okay, so that's how they get the camcorder. And then the next scene, the most disturbing scene in the movie, is you see this video playing of Henry and Otis in a house terrorizing this family, and they're like Otis has the mom, he's like being really sexual, like groping her and stuff, and then the dad's like tied up on the floor with a bag over his head, and like Henry's like poking at his head and stuff, and then their teenage son walks in, and Henry grabs him and starts fighting with him and all that, and on the floor, and then he breaks his neck and kills him. And then he goes over and kills the mom, breaks her neck, and then kills the dad, but the dad's killed off screen. And then like, you see the videotape rewind and it goes back to the beginning, and then it slowly pulls out, and you see Henry and Otis sitting on the sofa in their apartment, and Henry's like, why are you rewinding it? And Otis said, because I want to watch it again. And then, like, they just keep this videotape of them murdering this family in the house, like where Becky could get a hold of it, because Becky is not a killer in this. She doesn't know anything about the murders. And yeah, there's some other scenes too, like the opening scene of the movie where it's showing like all the victims of Henry Lee Lucas. It just shows like their body. It's like a bunch of dead women like in different areas, and it's showing like what happened to them. You don't see what happens. It's just like you look at their bodies and you see them like all cut up and stuff, but you hear like this audio over it, and like you hear women screaming and like all like what went on during what happened. So it kind of applies like what happened to them, and it's like it's very fucking disturbing. Especially the one scene where the woman's like sitting on the toilet and she has like a Coke bottle shoved in her mouth. Like this movie came out in '86 and I was just like, what the fuck? It was crazy. Like, but it's still a good movie. Then there's a scene where Otis and Henry go out because Otis and him get into a fight, kind of a fight, because Otis was being like really sexual towards his sister, and like Becky's like, "Can you guys go out and like chill or something?" So they go, "Yeah, let's go." So they pick up two prostitutes, and Henry ends up killing them. And then later on in the movie, I guess Otis didn't know that Henry was killing people, but later on in the movie, Otis was trying to sell weed to this kid, and he was trying to grope the kid, and the kid punched him in the face and ran off. And then Otis is mad about it. He's like, "Man, I want to kill someone like really bad." And then Henry said, "You want to kill someone? Well, come with me." So he takes them to down. He takes them down to like this tunnel area, and like under a freeway or something, like the interstate, whatever. And hands him a gun. And then like they park the car and lift the hood up to make it look like they had car trouble. So they flagged the car down to help them. And the guy gets out, and then Henry's like, "Otis, you know what to do." And then Otis shoots and kills the guy. And like, it's a very, yeah, it's a very fucked up movie. Like, and it kind of like hits on all the fears at that time, like hitchhiking and picking up or helping people with car trouble and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because there's one scene in the movie where Henry picks up a woman who's hitchhiking. They don't show what happens to her, but it kind of hits on like all those fears like back in the day with serial killers running around. Also, the ending scene when Otis is raping his sister and Henry comes in and like he attacks Otis and like stabs the hell out of him. But there's a scene where Becky stabs him in the Otis in the eye, and you could tell that's a dummy. It's a really bad effect now, but she stabs in the eye, and then Otis starts stabbing the hell out of him, and he kills him, and then he chops him up, and then chops him up in the bathtub, and then like puts his body parts in a garbage bag. And then it's implied that Becky is killed, like in the real life incident where Henry actually did kill Becky, or that's the only death they can kind of prove that he actually did. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. I mean, it's well shot. I love the music in it. It's very haunting. It's a very low budget movie, and you could tell but I'm kind of because they're kind of confined to one location. And I mean, it's going to be hard because supposedly Henry Lee Lucas was a nomadic killer. So he went from state to state, but this was all shot in Chicago, which I like that because it's kind of like reminds me of New York back in the 80s, like when I watched movies set in New York in the 70s and 80s, it was very gross and disgusting and like sleazy, and that's how Chicago was too back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, I'm guessing. And it just felt authentic to and felt right for what this movie was about. Um, yeah. Anyways, oh yeah, I forgot to mention too. Like they do give like little hints of like Henry Lee Lucas' personality. Like he was illiterate. He couldn't read or write. Um, but there was a scene in the movie where they hint at that, where Becky puts on a shirt. It says "I Heart Chicago" on it, and Henry says, "What does that say?" And she has to tell him what it says. Also, where he talks about where he lies too. Becky asks him, did you really kill your mama? And he goes, yeah, I did. And like he keeps telling like three different stories of how he killed his mom. Like Otis tells Becky that he said that Henry killed her with a baseball bat. Then Henry said that he stabbed her, and then he said he shot her, and then he went back to, oh yeah, I stabbed her. Or no, he said I shot her, then he went back to I stabbed her, and then he was like, yeah, oh, and then he says, yeah, I shot her. So it shows like how he lies too. But yeah, anyways, uh, I would highly recommend this movie. I know I was rambling on mainly about Henry Lee Lucas and how close it was to the actual case, but definitely check it out. Michael Rooker was very disturbing in this. He's like very quiet and reserved and very polite. But like when he kills people, it's very fucking disturbing because he turns like into a totally different person. And this is the movie I remember. This is the first movie I ever saw Michael Rooker in, and he came. It's like he went from a movie about a serial killer to all the way to a goofy guy in a comic book movie. It's so weird. And Otis, or not Otis Toole, Tom Tallis, he was really good in this movie as Otis Toole. Like he got that nasty, like, perverted side of Otis Toole down. And the woman who plays Becky, she was good too. She's more, I know Becky, the girl in real life, had like a mental disability. But in this movie, Becky's more like naive and stuff. And I thought she did a really good job, even though she was a little bit annoying. Like, when she asked Henry about like how he killed his mother, she was like, "Oh well, Otis told me." But she said, but he said not. He told me not to say anything to you. And I was like, "Then why the fuck are you open your mouth?" Like it was just stuff like that, you know. But anyways, that's my review.